Hi, I'm just going to, starting from chapter 5, if this works, I'm going to be just doing a little lecture. I don't like to lecture, but a little bit about housing. These are some lecture notes from the text Race in America, and I just want to point out. So what will be happening? Let's see. You're going to be, you have an assignment based on the main points. So I'm just going to start right here at this slide. I'm not going over all the slides, but what I want you to think about, America is more racially segregated today than it was in the 1800s. So this is, while you're reading, um, take into account that this is 2021, and in the 1800s, there was more of a racial, there was less of a racial divide than it is in 2021. Okay. And with looking at this slide, at the start of the 20th century, the rise of industrialism, thousands of people, immigrants, black, Mexican, white, Asians, poured into cities. And in different areas, like in New York, there was 5 points. Different groups clustered together. As you can see, Irish, German, Polish, Sweden, they clustered together. But I want you to realize that African American families lived in separate neighborhoods, but they did, in some cases, live with other groups of human beings. So just going into, and during the 20th century, there's in my another class I discussed how did people become white. The ethnic distinctions became less important because European immigrants, at what time was thought of ethnics, were able to assimilate into the white mainstream, and they would take the term white as their became a single white racial group. So this is just some pictures of the immigration in the 1930s. And it's interesting because in my other class, we talk about Mexico and the Mexican-American War and California, Texas, Arizona being part of Mexico. But it's really interesting. It's always been interesting to me that at one point, Mexicans were here and then they had to become citizens and then it was taken away. So this is a very interesting topic that I've done some research on and presented on. And then the Native Americans, you have an idea about, if you take my 190, you will learn more about the great struggle of the Native Americans. So this is just some slides, and I'm not going to go over this. And the term ghetto bothers me, and it always has. I believe it's a state of mind, and we say, oh, the term ghetto, but if you give a person a label, and you keep giving them that label, when do you start believing the label that you gave them? So I have an issue with this term. And what's interesting about certain areas were built strictly for whites, like the projects. They were built, the housing units, which we call projects. And if you see in Detroit in 1947, it was 92% white, and they were for white only. And in New York City, they were for whites only, but then the whites started moving to what we now know as the suburbs. So we have more. And like I say, I'm just stopping when I see, see something that I would like to go, because you will be, and this is interesting, this sign, which is still prevalent today. We want white tenants in our white community. You've seen where people, black and brown people, have moved to certain areas and they're not wanted there. And that's interesting to me, since we're all human beings. And white fight and white flight. So at times it was fight, and then once they felt, certain people, felt that, oh, we're not going to win this fight, they would flee. And as I said, they sold their homes to non-black and brown, non-whites, and the neighbors did object, but then eventually they moved to the suburbs to the neighbors. And then we have the unrest with Martin Luther King. Different in Harlem, there was racial uprisings because of a young human being was killed by police officers. So then we have the Watts Revolt, And I say people, and I want to say this, many who participated in uprisings, the majority of them were young black men, were fed up with white supremacy, and people kept calling it a riot, but they called it a revolt because it had a legitimate purpose. It was a response to police brutality and social exploitation of a community and of a people. So this is just some of this, and we had large demonstrations in every race and ethnicity. I marched for different Trayvon, George Floyd, Taylor, and I saw every race and ethnicity in those protests, not riots. And then this is very interesting. So the chapters is extremely informative, and I just want to go over some of the slides and stop and where I want to share with you, and make sure you read for your own. Economic, we have wealth inequity and material far from high paying jobs, and it is a vicious circle. And the mortgages in different areas is inflated to live in a neighborhood in order to keep it that way, so people wouldn't come in, different human beings, black and brown. So this is still a problem we have today, very much so. And areas, it goes along with redlining. There is educational segregation in New York City, where my daughter lives now, the police detective. She is forced to send her child, to my two granddaughters, to a private school, because where she is, because it's black and brown people, the majority is in Queens Village, New York, and some of the schools are not, some of the worst schools are in certain areas. So we're still in 2021 living with this today. And that's why we're studying what you're studying. And any of you who have seen the prices in California on houses, unaffordable America, 2021, is, yeah. So just going to the enclaves, we know Chinatown, in New York, Little Korea, there's Little Africa, there's different places. And people went there in order to have community, and in a lot of cases feel safe. So I'm just going through this. Border towns, which you will read about. Life on the reservation. I am going to be posting, there's 2 videos. You don't have to look at them, but for your own information, I'm going to post Blood and Crips Made in America, and a video on border towns. And we're looking at COVID-19, and it's certain hospitals, no beds, others there are. So this is very much today. So there are some questions, and so that's all. And I will be doing this with each chapter. I started with chapter 5. So thank you.